In this video, we're going to tour the CDD UI, and we'll go over how CDD organizes releases and the artifacts within those releases. So here on the screen, we can see our example release. And right here, we can see the release name along with the release version. To the left, under the Applications tab, we can see the various applications that are under development as part of this release. And we can also see the version of each application. The release itself is broken up into phases, which are represented by each of these columns. And within each phase are the various automated and manual tasks that are required to complete each phase. Behind the scenes, CDD is integrated with several DevOps tools, and many of the tasks can communicate back and forth with those tools, and also trigger executions such as deployments and automated testing. For example, in most releases, when a developer commits changes to an application and a new build is triggered, the new build is automatically communicated to CDD by the CI tool, and CDD then automatically begins to execute the first phase in the release. So let's take a look at the structure that CDD uses to organize releases, their artifacts, the integrations with DevOps tools that are used in the release, and the permissions for various levels of access within a release. So the highest level of organization in CDD is the project, and projects are used to separate releases and to control access to those releases. So each release is created in the context of a project, and then users must be given permission to access that project. And this helps to ensure the separation of duties in your pipeline, and it prevents other teams from inadvertently executing or modifying assets in your team's release. You can see the current project in the menu bar at the top of the CDD UI. If you're working in a SaaS environment, as we are here, you can also see the tenant name as well as the project name. If you're working in the on-premise version of CDD, you'll just see the project name. So if you only have access to one project, that project is automatically selected when you log in. For this demo, we actually have access to multiple projects and multiple SaaS tenants. So when we log in, the last project that we were viewing is selected. But we can switch projects at any time from the user icon. There are a number of features in CDD that are specific to the current project and to the tasks we can perform within that project. But there are also features that function across projects. So the user account menu provides access to features that remain the same regardless of which project you're in, such as your user settings and product documentation. This gear icon also provides access to features and settings that operate across projects. Typically, these features are used by an administrator, and access to these features is controlled by user permissions. From here, authorized users can access the activity log, global CDD settings, and the plugins that are used to integrate with the DevOps tools. You can also manage projects, user roles, and user groups. And it's worth noting that the roles and groups are defined at the cross-project level, but the individual permissions are controlled at the project level through the administration menu, which leads us to the rest of the menu bar. Most of the options in this portion of the menu bar are specific to the project that's currently selected. From the Administration tab, an authorized user can manage all of the assets and permissions for a project. The Test tab provides access to all of the adaptive testing features in the CDD test module. The Reports tab includes a variety of reports that provide valuable information about the releases in the current project, the quality of those releases, how, when, and where they were deployed, as well as insights into the environments, applications, and work items. The Features in the Calendars tab let authorized users plan and coordinate resource use and deployment plans across teams and releases. Some of these features are limited to the current project, while others coordinate releases for multiple projects at the same time. Tracks provide an easy visualization of the timelines and milestones for one release or for multiple releases, and a track can even include releases for multiple projects. Authorized users can use tracks to track progress, coordinate multiple releases, and even build dependencies between the releases and how they're deployed. The last option here is releases, but we're going to circle back to this menu and spend more time on the release options a little bit later. The foundations of a release for a business application are the smaller applications that work together to make up that business application. And we can see a list of defined applications by clicking Applications from the Administration tab. And here we have two applications that make up the web banking release. There's the web front-end application for the front end and the web backend application for the backend. So when we talk about applications in CDD, we're talking about these smaller applications or microservices. When we talk about the larger product that's being released, we're talking about the business application. And we can see the defined business application by clicking Administration and Business Applications. And if I click this business application, we can see that it's associated with the two smaller applications we were just looking at. Back on the Applications page, we can add an application from this page, but for this walkthrough, we're going to look at the details of one of the applications that we've already defined. And to do that, we just click the application name. Typically, each application is tied to a code repository. For this example, we're using GitHub. And we can define source control and work item connections for this application from the Actions menu. Also notice that there are 4 different environments listed for this application. In addition to defining each application in the release, we need to define each environment where those applications are going to be deployed from one phase to the next. In this case, we have the initial CI environment, a UAT environment for testing, and from there we'll promote the builds to a final verify environment. And then when everything's ready, we can deploy to production. To see a list of all the available environments in the current project, we can go back to the Administration menu and select Environments. And here we can see the environments for this project. One of the core advantages CDD provides in managing the release process is the ability to integrate with a wide variety of DevOps tools, such as GitHub, Jenkins, Rally, Jira, and more. Most of these integrations are accomplished through predefined plugins that are provided through CDD. The plugins are defined at a cross-project level, so if we go back to the gear icon and select Plugins, we can see a list of all the plugins that are available across all projects. For example, you can see that we have an Ansible plugin for the deployment tasks, Bitbucket and GitHub plugins for integrating with and receiving data from a code repository. There's a Blazemeter plugin for integrating with test frameworks and running tests directly from CDD. And there's a large number of plugins available to help you integrate with virtually any DevOps tool that you're probably already using in your pipeline. As CDD integrates with these tools, in addition to the plugins, we also need to define the specific endpoints that we need to connect to. The plugins are defined at the cross-project level, but the endpoints are specific to a given project, so we access those from the Administration menu. Each registered plugin introduces a specific endpoint type, and we can see endpoints for a GitHub repository, Rally, Ansible, and even Slack for sending notifications. And we can also create multiple endpoint instances for a specific endpoint type. The endpoints also include the credentials for the endpoint, and we can manage those here so we don't have to define them in each release task. It also keeps the credentials protected so they can't be seen or accessed by individual users. Whenever a new endpoint is needed, an authorized user can come into this page to create a new endpoint or click the endpoint name to edit an existing one. Now let's take a quick look at how all this fits together inside a CDD release. To do that, we click Releases, and this is a list of all the releases that we have access to within the current project. For this project, there's only one release defined. From this page, we can add a new release. We can also select a release in the list, and then perform actions like export, import, delete, or duplicate a release. But let's go ahead and open this release and look at the phases and tasks in more detail. A phase is a collection of tasks that relate to each deployment environment. So we have a separate phase for CI, for UAT, for verify, and for production. The phase lets a release manager or phase owner coordinate and orchestrate all of the tasks for one environment. And that includes the expected deployment tasks, but it can also include tasks to run a suite of tests, send a Slack notification or email. It can also include tasks for manual tasks or manual testing that might fall out of other release management tools. The phase also facilitates the automated promotion of a build from one environment to the next. For example, your CI phase might be set up to run automatically when a change notification is received from your CI tool. And once the CI phase completes successfully, that build can then be promoted either manually or automatically to the next phase. In this case, the build is scheduled to be promoted every night at midnight to the UAT environment. On the left, you can see the applications that we need to deploy. And this pane is actually collapsible, so if you ever need more real estate for your release, you can collapse it at any time. And this pane contains multiple tabs with a default view of the Applications tab. Like I said before, we've created this release to manage a web banking business application. And that business application is made up of two applications, one for the front end and one for the back end. And next to each application, we can see the specific version of the application for this release. And this version corresponds to the specific branch in my repository, in this case in GitHub. Also notice that we have tasks defined in each phase that relate to each of these applications. If we ever want to see the specific tasks that are associated with a given application, we just click the version number and select Highlight Relevant Tasks. And now the tasks for this application are highlighted, and we can see that there are deployment and testing tasks in each phase. And we can do the same thing for Web Frontend to see the tasks for that application. The Tokens tab shows any tokens that are defined in this release. Tokens are variables that are used to manage and update values that might change from one build or phase to another. By default, CDD automatically creates built-in tokens for each application, and you can see those here. If we ever need to create a custom token, we can easily do that from this pane. And the last tab in this pane is the Work Items tab. And here you can see the work items that are associated with this release. Work items are the features, user stories, or defects from your Agile tracking tools such as Rally, Jira, or ServiceNow. And the imported work items still reside in your tracking tool, but you can see the details of each work item here. And this lets you track the status of your work items directly in CDD and compare the actual work based on code commits to the planned work as imported from the tracking tool. So that's the pane on the left. Now let's look at the pane on the right. The activity pane helps you monitor release activities and identify and troubleshoot release issues. This pane is updated in real time with release events such as execution events, error messages, and warnings. The list of activities can grow very quickly, so you can filter this list or search for specific activities. And again, if you ever need more real estate for your release, this pane can be collapsed at any time. So that's a quick tour of the main features in CDD and where you can find them in the UI. The remainder of this course will explore many of these features in greater detail.